Well, now we're here. Handling difficult conversations. That's what we're going to do. Again, I'll give you the scenario and why I believe that this. I'm trying to give you guys, I mean, you're reading the textbook, obviously, there's articles and things like that, but hopefully, what these additional videos give you, um, these videos give you additional skills to complement the skills that you're learning through the textbook and the activities and the discussions and all those things. Hopefully, these lectures will really help you gain additional knowledge in areas that usually aren't talked about and things that have really helped me in my career. Okay, so let me just give you the background on this and why we're talking about this. So I was 24 years old, and I was a part of, and for some reason I was really good at writing emails and getting people to get along. And so my boss put me as the project manager over the department. There were 15 people in the department. Some had law degrees, PhDs, and some have been doing this for a long time. And then this silly little 24-year-old comes in here and is, over all their projects. Okay. And so what was interesting to me is that the reason why I think my boss put me in there is because he did not know how to handle difficult conversations. So there's turnover, there's fighting, there was a marriage, and there's sexual harassment. This department gave me kind of a good springboard to be in academia, I guess, or just it's the weirdest department ever. And the weirdest thing about this department was that the nicest guy in there, that I thought was a nice guy who I trained, ended up murdering his wife. I mean, you can't write this crap. It's crazy. Anyway, so we're going to deal with handling conversations. What they did is they sent the managers to a training called Crucial Conversations, Crucial Confrontations. Some of you may have already heard about this. Okay, I actually think they're a solid tool set, not the end-all be-all for difficult conversations. I've added some things in here, one of which being integrity that we'll talk about at the end. But they spent tons of money, sent us for a 6-week seminar, all the managers. I was the cheapest of them, and I was making not very much, like $57,000. It was awful back then. Everyone else is making 6 figures, and this poor little guy, I'm just such a poor soul. Feel bad for me. Was sent with all of these executive type or aspiring executive management. Okay, so we're going to talk about this exact training, the things that I think are great from it, and I'm going to add some things that I've learned with dealing with international audiences, dealing with executives, executive management, entrepreneurs, CEOs, governments. I've dealt with a lot of people through starting my own consulting company, and I've dealt with a lot of very difficult conversations. Okay, so let's give you the tool set. Use it or lose it. I don't think you'd lose it, but maybe you would. Okay, so let's see. Some of your conversations probably go like this.
Kyle, you gotta start washing the dishes after you're done using them. You can't keep on acting like a child.
Okay, fine. I'll wash them, man. I have to freaking heart attack here. The wall's gonna explode. Doesn't mean it can explode so soon.
What? What are you saying?
I didn't say nothing.
You sound like an idiot.
Kyle, stand up to him, dude.
Yeah, Kyle, stand up to me, dude.
Okay. I think. Actually, you're the idiot. I think if I had my way, I'd freaking start kicking you so hard, man. And then your girlfriend would be like, please don't hurt him much more. Can I kiss you? I'd be like, sorry, babe.
We can't understand you when you turn around completely like that.
Why don't you guys pick on somebody who's like your own size? Because you walk around like, we're the giants of this land. And we can do whatever we want. I'll tell you something. You can't do whatever you want. Not to me. No way, no how, buddy.
We're all about the same size, Kyle.
Okay, so what's your point?
You're acting like a baby, okay? Can you just do the dishes and start talking like a real human?
Okay, fine, man. Is this better? Is this what you wanted? Freaking walk around like a pansy. Underwear, man. You think you're president or something? You definitely are not president.
Okay, this is ridiculous. Kyle, just do the dishes, okay?
Okay, so we all have kind of our tactics for dealing with difficult conversations. Some of you guys probably go silent. Some of you get upset. Some of you hold it all in and then explode or whatever it is. But a lot of the times what happens is people get emotional and then they'll get into their little shell, and in that shell is a lot of very, very unuseful uh, skill sets and use unuseful tactics that won't get you anywhere. So we're going to give you some useful ones. Okay? All right, so what happens when you don't know how to have conversations? I spoke to the VP of Mountain America. He teaches in one of the classes, and I was in there with a student, and the student, so in the adjunct office, there's my office, and, well, I don't know if you can call it an office, but my cubicle, and then on the end was his cubicle, right? And so I just had gone over this class with, and a student missed it or whatever, and he came up to talk to me about the class. And so what I asked the VP, and I said, "What do you think is the most underappreciated skill out there?" And he said, "Oh, by far, dealing with difficult conversations." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, Nobody, I said, sorry, no, everybody I have can do basic customer service. Okay, everybody I have can do numbers. Everybody can do all these. Where the turnover starts is within politics, and there's animosity, and there's people who says, well, you've heard your parents, well, this coach, he has it out for my son or whatever, my daughter, right? So in these types of ways, he said that was the hardest thing that he had to deal with was people because they didn't know how to have difficult conversations. And what they would result in, okay, what these difficult conversations would result in would be things like employee turnover. And when you're turning over executives constantly, okay, headhunter fees for executives end up being $20,000 and $40,000. Okay, if you're turning those over every time, it's costing 20 to 40 grand plus 3 to 5 months of their salary. They're probably in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. You can do the math, right? It's a lot of money if you don't know how to have difficult conversations. You get. Let's think about the job. If you love your boss, if you get your heart out there, they empathize, they sympathize, you understand each other. Are you going to work better or worse for them? Or you have a boss who's a total, I can't say that word, I'll break the honor code. He or she's not a nice person, right? What does your work look like, right? It turns instantly, not instantly, but it's harder to give your best efforts, even though you should. It's hard to give it to somebody or some situations that you don't like. Okay, and then you start to resent that person. It builds bridges. It builds up. Your pile of crap gets bigger. It stinks, and everybody starts to see it, and then it turns into a giant financial mess. Difficult conversations cost the ability to difficult conversations costs companies billions of dollars a year. The ability to have them, that's why we were talking about Warren Buffett earlier about persuasion and being able to do that. The ability to have difficult conversations in constructive ways is worth so much to company. Okay? So here's the problem. The problem is that we as Americans are so easily offended. And I don't understand why. I've discussed this with many classes. So I was a missionary in Germany, and I went in. I started to learn German, the language. I went to church one Sunday. This is back when I had hair, and I was young and youthful. Was excited to be out there, and I've been learning German for a few months. I had woke up early in the morning, an extra 30 minutes, so I could have it to myself, so my companion wouldn't bug me. 30 minutes to learn the language. So I walked into church, and I met this member, and I remember the member said, "Oh, you're new," and I was actually understanding. I was really excited about it. I was like, "Yeah, da stimmt," trying to figure out. He said, "Oh, are all Americans as short as you are?" I was like, "Don't know what you mean by that, but probably not, because my companion's standing right next to me. He's American, and he's like, 5'10". I don't know." He said, "Oh, you look like a leprechaun." And what was interesting to me is at first I was kind of offended, like, are leprechauns like bad? I mean, Irish people, are they bad looking? I don't know. I don't know. Singer from the Cranberries, she's cute, Mm. But I was wearing a green suit. I forgot that part. And I was wearing a green suit. Oh, you look like a leprechaun. And what was interesting is she was just announcing her thoughts and wasn't trying to be offensive or to degrade me in any way, or wasn't attacking me personally. She's just announcing her thoughts. And I realized that I actually came to really enjoy this. And let me tell you the story that changed how I oops how I came to see why it's a bad thing to be easily offended and to not be able to have difficult conversations. Okay, so another missionary story. Germans are great at difficult conversations because they just have them. They just have them. And I'm sure some of the other cultures out there have them as well. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We are eating curry at this wonderful Bishop's wife's house. Typical German, and I think her name was Helga. It had to be Helga. Anyway, she's like 6'2", big old lady, and I'm just intimidated anyway. But so she gives us her food, and it goes around the table, and we start eating it. First bite I take, I kid you not, I was going to die. It was so spicy. But you know, as a missionary, you're trying to be polite, and so yeah, I kept eating it. Eyes are watering, nose is watering. You know the feeling. And then she looks over at me, and she says, "Elder Taylor, how's the soup?" And I said, "Oh, it's great." Okay, and then she went to Elder Elsholtz, and he said, "Elder Elsholtz, how's the soup?" And he said, "Oh, it's terrible. It's way too spicy. It's just not right. It's way too spicy." She went to everyone else on the table, all said it was terrible. I'm like, "You guys are the biggest jerks." And she looks at me she looks at me, points her finger at me, and says, "This big old German lady, right? I'm already scared anyway." Points points her finger at me and says, "Elder Taylor, don't you ever lie to me again." It was kind of interesting because they wanted to improve. She wanted her soup to taste good, right? And no matter how and the thing is, when I came home, I did that same thing to my mom. I was like, "Oh yeah, this food's no good," and she started crying. I don't get it. But so so when you're dealing with Americans, remember your audience. Purpose, your audience. Your audience. Sometimes with Americans, they are easily offended. It's good to have thick skin. It's good to be, and obviously, Brigham Young said, a fool is someone who takes offense when no offense is taken, or no offense is meant, and a bigger fool is someone who takes offense when offense is intended, right? So let's get our thick skin on. We're going to have difficult conversations. You're going to have a skill set to handle it, and believe me, you'll be grateful for it. You'll probably make some mistakes, hurt some feelings, but at the end, after you've gathered this skill set, it is vital for the rest of your life. Okay, so here's the first. Before the conversation, if you trust each other and have an open relationship, if you can do this, like the Germans had with me, the conversations go a lot better. So you've got to focus on trust before you have the difficult conversation. Sometimes you're not able to, but if it's possible, you'd like to have trust before the conversation. Okay? So here are the skills. This is what we're going to do. Okay? I'm going to give you the skill sets, then I'm going to give you some real life scenarios, and then you are going to have the opportunity to press pause and tell me, not tell me, but think about what you would do in this situation. And we'll go over how the situation ended up and suggestions I have to handle these conversations. Okay, number one is no assumptions. You cannot assume anything. If someone is mad and they look mad, you cannot assume that they are upset, because they may not be. No assumptions whatsoever. Number two, stick to facts. Give you an example. Okay? So you have an employee who is a real jerk and you can't stand them or whatever. And they come in early, come in late, and their work is subpar. And it's subpar because you have a performance evaluation and then it compares, right? So if you were having a difficult conversation with them, you wouldn't say, "You're mean to people and you're just not doing your work good," and you wouldn't do any of that type of stuff. You'd say, "Okay, work starts at 8:30. The last 4 days in a row, you were late. You came in at 9, 9:15, and 9:20. These three things need to be handled in on time. You handed in this 2 days late to cause this, 3 days late to cause this." Lastly, is you have your performance review showed X, Y, and Z, and the average is X, Y, and Z. Help me understand what's going on here, right? Versus just saying, "You're a jerk and I don't like you." or whatever else you want to do. Okay. All right. And so this one I think is the toughest one because people are kind of out for themselves. So you're trying to find an honest silver lining. And I'll get back to this one. This is a tough one because the honest silver lining sometimes is you're fired, but I'll help you find another job, right? So it's a bad news, but it's still helping them, find some type of silver lining to it. Silver lining obviously meaning something good, some kind of hope, whatever. So, okay. So let's go through these scenarios. Okay, this is the real scenario. Press pause, read it. Okay. So what do you do? Let me tell you what I did. I lied. And that's awful. And I was 21 and I was scared, so don't judge me. Don't you dare judge me. Or I guess Moroni says to judge because she can. So I lied. Awful, right? Okay, so you're making them a couple. Here's a couple assumptions that everybody makes on this one. Okay, you're making the mistake that you absolutely understand what they're saying, the German team. Okay, that the German team is upset. They may not be. This may be a type of their humor, right? You don't know. When the IT director asks you to translate, if it were me now with my skill set, I would say something like, I would say something to the effect of, okay, I'm not a native speaker. I'm not 100% sure what it means. So I have an idea, but I'd like you to talk to them to see what they say. Figure it out, right? Our IT team had made a mistake. That was a fact, right? And the Germans knew it. But I would have them, because I don't know. I don't know who's upset and what the email means and stuff. Maybe a colloquialism or an office joke or something like that. I don't know. A lot of people make the assumptions and, just say, hey, this is what it means. And I wouldn't do that in that scenario again. I would, again, it's a difficult conversation and have them ask, hey, what do they mean? And then if they lie about it, then you get on the phone and see what's going on. Okay? All right, scenario 2. Press pause and read it. Okay, so a fellow employee, that means you're not their boss, you're not their supervisor, you're not whatever. Okay, so what do you do? So in this scenario, okay, you would stick, let's use our skills, okay? No assumptions, stick to the facts, and find an honest silver lining. Okay, so first of all, you're making the assumption that they are viewing pornography. Okay, maybe it's part of their assignment, maybe it's a pop-up that they can't get to close, maybe something like that, right? That could be it. Okay, and let's say that it is pornography and they are viewing it. Okay, number one, if you're female and male and it's a male, or if you're male and it's a female, or whatever it is, by law, viewing pornography at work is sexual harassment. They cannot do it. They may not know that. Okay, so if you have built trust with this person, or if you don't feel comfortable, then turn them to supervisor, right? Sure. Okay. Second, but at the end of the day, they are humans and they do make mistakes, and you might be able to help them. Okay, so if it were me going by, I would say the following. Okay, stick to the fact. Okay, I walked by your desk yesterday and you quickly closed the screen. I walked by your desk today and I saw you viewing pornography. So I'm not sure if you know this, but and maybe you do, but viewing pornography at work could have it could cost you your job, and I'm not sure if that's if that's probably the best thing for both of us to happen. How can we it makes this is assuming that that they want to and you have trust. Okay, how do you have enough time where we could go talk about where there aren't others around and we can talk about what's going on here? Okay, again, I'm not sure. How can I help? Okay, and now they're like, I'll view pornography whenever I want and I'll do whatever I want, and you say, okay, but then I'm gonna have to turn you into the supervisor, right? And let me give you a scenario on this one. I'll tell you what happened. Okay, so in 2000, this would be 2008. Okay, in 2008, we installed some. I was a part of a legal team at a company called Zango, and they installed some surveillance software on the people because obviously they're the computers. And they brought us in. I was the only non-attorney there, and they're like, yeah, we got to start doing some surveillance on our employees because of lawsuits or whatever, some crap like that. And I said, cool. They said, well, what do you think about it? I'm like, cool. I don't care. Stick it on my computer, right? Because when I go to work, I work. It's just kind of, I think that's easier that way. It's too difficult to do other things. Okay, so what happened is that there were layoffs. I believe it was either 20 or 40% about 2 weeks later because tons of the IT team and others were viewing pornography on work time. And, pornography is what it is to you as LDS. For some people, marriage therapists use it, and, the world doesn't see it the same way that we do as here at BYU. But obviously, it's sexual harassment. Obviously, it's a lawsuit if they get caught. Anyway, so what happened was one of the people got laid off and talked to me, and this was my home teaching companion, by the way, and said, I can't believe they laid me off. They won't even tell me why, and they won't give me a referral. And I knew why, and I was like, oh boy, right? But nobody warned these. Nobody walked by the desk and said, hey man, I saw this. I don't appreciate it. You could get in trouble, right? Okay. Maybe people did and they just ignored it, but 20 to 40% of staff, I don't think that obviously somebody must have seen something. Something must have happened, and nobody had the difficult conversation. Okay, next scenario. Read it. Okay, so a lot of assumptions that a lot of people assume that this person, your fellow employee, is cutting corners, and that may not be the case. You maybe think they are. Okay. So this is how I would handle this scenario by no assumptions, sticking to the facts, and finding an honest silver lining. Okay, I would say something like, "Hey, I got your, let's just call it a database. I got your database. This is what the client requested, X, Y, and Z, and this is what I got: lowercase x, lowercase y, and lowercase c. Here are the specs for the project, and can you help me understand why what you're sending isn't what they requested?" Well, and here's the response. Well, I just didn't have time. Okay, because of the deadline. All right, so here's where you go to an honest silver lining. Well, let me call the client and see whether this is a hard and fast deadline, and they want us to send what you sent, and we'll tell them about, you did the lowercase x here, and it should have been a capital X or whatever, and see what they want. If they want us to, if they can extend it and have the product that they paid for, or if they want it on the deadline and understand the errors. So in this case, you're not assuming they're cutting corners. You're going to bat for them by finding an honest silver line. Does this work, right? And in that scenario, let's just say that he did cut corners and he's felt horrible about it. Then you can have a conversation there and build more ethos, more trust with that person. Okay? All right, next one. Okay, so this happened to me, and let me tell you what I did. So my brother and my brother and one of my best friends, so she's the drummer for Neon Trees, and my brother was in a band, and they were touring the U.S., and they were going to go for 6 weeks, and they asked me to come and do filming and merchandise and whatever, just to be with them. 6 weeks. We were both single, my brother and I, and this would have been a great opportunity to spend with him. And what did I do? Let me tell you what I did, and I still regret it. I just didn't ask my boss. I didn't have the difficult conversation. Right? Memories are forever. You'll get money back, and I'll give you another life skill set called, life and balance, balancing life and time management lecture later. But I didn't even think, because I didn't want to have the conversation with him. Right? Now looking back, I could have found another job, and knowing my boss, he'd probably been like, you know what, that's fine. And in this finding it and now having a difficult conversation, this is what I would have said. I said, look, this is the scenario. It's my brother. He's touring across the U.S. He's my best friend, right? So start with the pathos and say, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'd really like to do it. It's not for a month, so what I can do before then is work extra Saturdays. I could, I could work every day extra. I could do 6-day work weeks. I could do whatever it takes. I could train somebody on these 3 different things. So by the time I leave, I would have basically a hack, kind of a replacement for me uh, during that 6 weeks. And if there's possible, you can call me when there's problems. That's what I would have done. But I just didn't have it because I was scared, because it was my first real job and a career. And now I see the film. One of my other best friends went to. They talk about it all the time, and I'm sad. But later, actually about 3 years ago, I did go with them, and it was awesome. And I made up for it. I didn't care. I had class. I did the classes online. I had my business. I just told no on the contracts or whatever. I said I had kids, and my wife was more than willing to have me send me or let me go. Which my wife's amazing and she's great. So marry well. Anyway, but I did make up for that. But that's something that it better be a once in a lifetime opportunity. Once in a lifetime opportunity is not, oh, I can go skiing, or oh, like, this band's coming in town and I got to see them, right? If you use this unwisely, it will bite you. But if it truly is something that you will never have the opportunity to do again, like one of your friends is dying or whatever, and you have time to spend time, and you want to spend the last 2 weeks with them. Those types of things, you better be willing to lose your job over them, because money will always come back. You guys are smart. You're diligent. Money's always going to be there for you. Okay? All right. Last one. Okay. So this is going to segue into the next scenario. Okay? So this is what I say on this one, and some of you guys are gonna hate me for it, and you're gonna feel like I don't know what you're gonna feel like, but I hope you feel what I'm saying is true. Okay, if you told somebody that you will do it, you better do it. Once you lose credibility and give empty promises, it's tough to get that back, right? So in this scenario, I would say something like the following. I would say, look, I said I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And I know you probably don't want me, let's say I get fired. Whatever. I know you don't want me to, but my promise is my bond, and I'm going to do this. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to ask for a deadline extension. If we can't get it, then I'll do it. Okay, I'm going to try to get 3 or 4 other people on the project. If they can't do it, then I'll do it. I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. And you don't, if they say, oh no, it's okay, you say, no, it's not okay. I don't want you, I don't want you to be on the hook for something that I promised I would do. And again, like I said, your job, you can find other jobs. You just can. Okay? Money's everywhere. My brother makes money flying falcons around stupid vineyards, right? You can find a job, but you can't get your integrity back. And that's what we're going to talk about for the last part of class. This is a longer look. I know, but let's do this real quick. Go ahead, press pause and take a drink break. There you go. It was wonderful, wasn't it? All right. So at my graduation, I got my MBA at the U, and there's a guy named Jack Britton who was the dean, and he was stepping down to do who knows what. I think he was retiring. And so this is 2009. So we're in a crisis right now. Back then was also another crisis. I think the crisis back then obviously was the economic downturn. We're yet to see what's going to happen here, but people were losing their jobs left and right, and everybody was blaming it on business people. Okay, so 2009. So going into MBA program, my starting salary should have been somewhere around 100,000 after my MBA. Okay, in 2009, afterwards, because as 2007, 2009, it went down to 70. Okay, placement was 95%. 2009 placement out of the U was 70%. So, and what happened is basically governments and banks and whoever the colluders are. There's still some theories out there, mostly you know, the banking industry and business. Basically, were unethical and lied. So Jack Britton gets up there. Okay, so this is the first college graduation for my in-laws. They're incredibly hardworking blue collar family, so graduations are not something they do. Anyway, so he gets up there, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to be here for like an hour, right? Keynote speaker, that's it. He's a one speaker, we're done, right? He gets up there and he says, I understand what kind of situation you guys are in. He says, a lot of things have happened lately. He says, I have been doing business for a long time. A long time. And he says, there's one thing that I'm going to say. And he said, protect your name with your life. Integrity is everything. And he sits down. It's like the best commencement speech. He says, protect it with your life. Integrity is absolutely everything. And so that has always stuck with me in this scenario, in difficult conversations. When you do have integrity, when you do have trust, they just go a lot better. Especially with you doing those three things of no assumptions, sticking to the facts, and finding honest silver linings. Because what happens when people compromise on their integrity? Obviously, impeachment, Bernie Madoff's in jail, blowing $1 billion Ponzi scheme. Tiger Woods is starting to get back, but he lost all sorts of endorsements because he had zero integrity. Okay. So from a religious perspective, this is one of the first things. We believe being honest, true, chaste, benevolent. We believe in these things. Why is that? That's a religious tenet. It is canonized scripture, the Articles of Faith. Okay? This is something from President that I love. No substitute for personal integrity. If he means that means charity doesn't even get you there. Right? But if you have charity, you'll have integrity because you love people, right? But he's saying there's no substitute. Performance, keeping one's word, doing what's right regardless of the circumstances. And this stinks. I'm telling you. It stinks. I'll give you another scenario. Hopefully you like my stories. I got lots of them. They're fun. But at the DMV, they ask you that question of how much did you buy this for when you buy a car, right? And idiot Scott said as a gift or whatever. So I lied, right? And felt horrible. And so, so I went back. I don't know, why would I lie over money? It's so stupid. But when you're young and dumb, or old and dumb, or whenever you're dumb, you just do those things, right? So, so I went back in there and I said, look, this is what I did. I'm sorry, I lied. And the lady was so taken back. She's like, oh yeah, people do this all the time. I'm like, she's like, this doesn't happen. And she says, thank you. Right? She says, thank you for being honest. And I felt so happy inside. It was much more worth than whatever the money I saved is stupid, whatever, right? But it was hard because I could spend that money on whatever, right? For me, going back in and having integrity, and I've really tried to do that the best ever since then, right? On keeping my word, keeping my name, keeping my promise. Drives me nuts, or drives not me nuts, drives my wife nuts because I'll tell somebody I'll be at a soccer game, and she's like, "Well, you don't have to." And she told me, "Yes, I do. That's just how it is." So, protect your name with your life. Okay. Now, if somebody is telling you something is great and wonderful and whatever, and you're looking at types of making these decisions, and one of the things that I've found out, get rich quick schemes and those types of things, is that if it feels wrong, it probably is. So if you're in a conversation and you should say something, you feel it, like, oh, I need to bring this up, this is important, and you don't, it's probably wrong that you didn't. Okay? Not something that really does press in your soul and say, look, let's just say, who can we use? That's just because we have two Abbies. We'll say Abby. Look, Abby, in your heart you feel this, you've got to tell them X. You've got to tell them. And you don't, it's probably wrong. So here's something that's really helped me is see every one of these situations from a 10-year perspective. If you were in this conversation and situation again, 10 years, or if you were looking back on this conversation 10 years from now, 10 years in the future, would you have the conversation? Yes or no? Would you say things differently? Yes or no? And I'm still struggling with one of these conversations because there's a lot of abuse and alcoholism so abuse on my side and alcoholism on my wife's side. And for the abuse factor on my side, I laid it out. I've had all of the difficult conversations. For the alcoholism on her side, since it's such a weird theme or whatever, I haven't, and it's hard. But I did a couple times, and I was amazed with the results. Right? One of them was like, look, you can't take my kids when you're driving drunk. It just doesn't happen. And for my wife, that was a difficult conversation because that's how they grew up. Right? I said, no, that doesn't. Here are the facts. If you would feel bad, X. You would feel bad, X. If you have a beer, any alcohol, you just can't drive my kids. And that was a conversation that I was proud of. So see all these conversations from a 10-year perspective. If you feel like you should say something, you probably should. We believe it's called the Holy Ghost, right? You should have those conversations. And hopefully these have been a very, very helpful lecture for you. And to end, because this is more of a scriptural and spiritual lesson, and hopefully it's enlightened your spirituality as well, giving you this skill set to deal with these conversations, to become a leader in difficult conversations, to love those enough to tell them hard things, right? But I love this, Job 27:5. Till I die, I will not remove mine integrity from me. And we obviously know what happened to Job, right? After he went through all that stuff, he was rewarded as 100-fold or 10-fold. I'm not a math major, so I don't pay attention to those things in the scriptures. But he was rewarded for his integrity. And that's what this world needs. Our world needs people who are willing to have difficult conversations, who stick to their word, who have integrity, and love people enough to find an honest silver lining and help them to that point. Okay? Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully you enjoyed this lecture. It's helped me. It's changed my life in so many different ways. I still struggle with parts of this. I'm getting better at it. But I think this is a skill that in a communications class, you'll probably not get this from another professor. I hope you do, but you probably won't, and you'll probably never hear it again. If you are lucky enough to hear it again, you'll be a pro by then because you already practiced. You already know this stuff, right? So again, use it, make mistakes. It's worth it. See this from 10 years. See these conversations from a 10-year perspective. Go, just again, if you figure this out, you'll be much more worth much more to companies, much more to your friends, and much more to God as you go forth in this world with integrity and with the ability to have difficult conversations. All right, friends, we will see you later.